Emma Thompson walked through the busy halls of London's largest airport, her clipboard in hand and her eyes watching everything round her. She had been doing this job for 12 years. And she still felt proud every morning when she put on her uniform. As a safety inspector, Emma knew that millions of people trusted her to make sure their flights were safe. This responsibility made her feel important and useful. The airport was always full of noise and movement. Passengers hurried past with their suitcases, rolling them quickly across the smooth floor. Children held their parents' hands tightly, looking up at the big windows where they could see planes taking off and landing. Flight attendants walked by in their neat uniforms, pulling small suitcases behind them. Emma loved being part of this busy world where people from all over the globe came together. But lately, something was making Emma feel uncomfortable. During her daily walks through the airport, she started noticing things that worried her. At the security checkpoints, where passengers had to take off their shoes and put their bags through machines, there were sometimes not enough workers during the busiest times of the day. Emma would watch long lines of tired passengers waiting and waiting, while only 2 or 3 security officers tried to help everyone. Emma also noticed problems with the equipment every day. She had to check that all the machines were working properly. The maintenance reports always said that everything had been inspected and was working fine. But when Emma looked at some of the machines herself, she could see that they needed more care. Some had small warning lights that should have been checked more carefully. Others made strange noises that the reports didn't mention. These weren't big problems that would cause accidents, but they made Emma feel worried. She knew that small problems could become big problems if nobody paid attention to them. In her 12 years of work, she had learned that being careful about little things was what kept everyone safe. Emma decided to talk to her supervisor, Mr. Roberts. He was a kind man who had been working at the airport for 20 years. Emma respected him and thought he would want to know about her concerns. She knocked on his office door one Tuesday morning. "Mr. Roberts, I'd like to talk to you about some things I've been noticing during my inspections," Emma said. Sitting down in the chair across from his desk, Roberts looked up from his computer and smiled. "What's on your mind, Emma?" Emma told him about the understaffed security checkpoints and the equipment that seemed to need more attention. She spoke carefully, not wanting to sound like she was complaining or causing trouble. Roberts listened, politely, but his smile never changed. When Emma finished talking, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Don't worry, Emma, everything is fine. We just need to keep things moving smoothly. The airport is busier than ever, and we're all doing our best to handle it." Emma felt confused by his response. She had expected him to be interested in her observations, maybe even grateful that she was paying such close attention. Instead, he seemed to want to dismiss her concerns without really thinking about them. But what if these small problems become bigger problems? Emma asked. "Trust me, Emma, I've been doing this for a long time. We have systems in place to handle everything. Just focus on your regular duties and don't worry so much." Emma left his office feeling more confused than before. She walked home that evening thinking about the conversation. The bus ride to her small flat in the suburbs seemed longer than usual. She looked out the window at the busy London streets and wondered if she was being too worried about nothing, or if Mr. Roberts was being too relaxed about something important. When Emma got home, she found her teenage daughter Lucy sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by school books and papers. Lucy was 17 years old and worked very hard at her studies. She wanted to go to university next year, and Emma was proud of how dedicated her daughter was. "Hi, Mom," Lucy said, looking up from her math homework. "How was work today?" Emma sat down next to her daughter and watched her work. Lucy had the same careful attention too. Detail that Emma had. She checked her answers twice and made sure her writing was neat and clear. Looking at Lucy made Emma think about all the other families who trusted that their flights would be safe. Parents traveling with children, grandparents visiting their families, young people going on their first big adventures. All of these people believed that someone like Emma was making sure everything was safe for them. That night, Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about her responsibility to all those passengers. She thought about her duty to speak the truth about what she had seen. She knew that staying quiet might be easier. But she also knew that it might not be right. Just before she fell asleep, Emma made a decision. Tomorrow, she would start keeping detailed notes about everything she observed during her inspections. She would write down exactly what she saw, when she saw it, and what she thought about it. She didn't know what she would do with these notes, but she knew that keeping them was the right thing to do. Emma finally fell asleep, feeling a little better about having a plan. Even if she wasn't sure where it would lead her. Emma started carrying a small notebook with her everywhere she went at the airport. Every time she saw something that worried her, she wrote it down. She wrote about the times when security checkpoints had only 2 people working instead of 4. She wrote about machines that made strange noises. She wrote about warning lights that stayed on longer than they should. Writing everything down made Emma feel like she was doing something important, even though she wasn't sure what would happen next. After 2 weeks of keeping notes, Emma began to notice something else. Other workers at the airport seemed worried too, but nobody was talking about it. She could see it in their faces when they thought nobody was looking. During busy times, she watched security guards looking stressed and tired. She saw maintenance workers shaking their heads when they walked away from certain machines. She noticed that some of her fellow inspectors looked concerned during their rounds, but they never said anything to each other. Emma decided she needed to talk to someone. During her lunch break, she sat at a usual table in the staff cafeteria. The room was full of airport workers eating sandwiches and talking quietly. Emma looked round and saw Tom Miller, a baggage handler who had been working at the airport for 20 years. Tom was a friendly man with grey hair and kind eyes. Emma had spoken to him many times before, but always about ordinary things like the weather or weekend plans. Emma walked over to Tom's table with a lunch tray. "Mind if I sit here, Tom?" she asked. "Of course, Emma. Please sit down," Tom said, moving his jacket to make room for her. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Emma was trying to find the right words to ask what she wanted to ask. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke carefully. "Tom, you've been working here for a long time. Have you ever noticed anything that made you worry about how we do things here?" Tom stopped eating and looked round the cafeteria nervously. He seemed to be checking if anyone was listening to their conversation. Then he leaned closer to Emma and spoke in a quiet voice. "Well, sometimes we're told to hurry up the security checks on cargo because flights are running late. The supervisors say we need to keep things moving fast. It's probably fine, but it makes me feel a bit uneasy. I mean, I know how to do my job properly, but when everyone is rushing, sometimes corners get cut." Emma felt her heart beating faster. Tom was describing exactly the kind of thing she had been worried about. She wasn't imagining these problems. "Do you ever talk to anyone else about this?" Emma asked. Tom shook his head. "Who would I talk to? The supervisors are the ones telling us to hurry up, and I don't want to get in trouble. I have a family to support, and jobs aren't easy to find these days." Emma understood exactly how Tom felt. She thanked him for talking to her and went back to her inspections. But now she felt less alone with her concerns. A few days later, Emma had a chance to speak with Betty Wilson, a flight attendant who had been working for the airline for 15 years. Betty was waiting for her next flight in the crew rest area when Emma approached her. "Betty, can I ask you something?" Emma said, sitting down in the chair next to her. "Sure, Emma. What's on your mind?" Emma explained that she had been noticing some things at the airport that worried her, and she wondered if Betty had ever seen anything concerning during her flights. Betty looked thoughtful for a moment. Passengers sometimes complain about safety issues, little things, like overhead bins that don't close properly or seat belts that stick. Usually, these complaints get handled very quietly. Someone writes a report, but I'm not sure if anyone investigates them properly. Most of the time, we're just told to reassure the passengers that everything is fine. Betty paused and looked around to make sure no one was listening. "I love this job, Emma. I love helping people and seeing the world. But I wish we could talk about these things more openly. Sometimes I feel like we're all pretending that everything is perfect when maybe it's not." Emma felt sad hearing Betty's words. She realized that she wasn't alone in her concerns, but she also realized that everyone was afraid to speak up. They were all worried about losing their jobs or getting in trouble with their supervisors. Over the next few weeks, Emma began to understand something important. The airport was under a lot of pressure to keep flights on time and keep costs down. This pressure was affecting how thoroughly some safety procedures were being followed. Everyone wanted to do their job well, but they also felt rushed and stressed. When Emma went home each evening, she tried to act normal around her daughter Lucy. But Lucy was a smart girl who noticed when her mother was worried about something. One evening, while they were eating dinner together, Lucy put down her fork and looked at her mother seriously. "Mom, is everything okay at work? You seem worried about something." Emma looked at her daughter's concerned face and felt her heart fill with love. Lucy was 17 years old, but she was already so caring and thoughtful. Emma reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "I'm just trying to figure out how to do the right thing, sweetheart. Sometimes that's harder than it sounds." Lucy squeezed her mother's hand. "You always do the right thing, Mom. That's one of the things I love most about you." That night, Emma lay in bed thinking about her conversations with Tom and Betty. She thought about all the other workers who might be feeling the same way. She thought about the passengers who trusted them all to keep their flights safe. Most of all, she thought about Lucy's words and her belief that her mother always did the right thing. Emma knew that she had to find a way to speak up about her concerns, even if it was scary. She just wasn't sure how to do it yet. Emma spent 3 weeks working on her report every evening after she came home from work. She sat at her kitchen table with her notebook, her laptop, and all the detailed notes she had been taking. She wanted to make sure that everything she wrote was true and fair. She didn't want to exaggerate the problems or make them sound worse than they were. She also didn't want to blame anyone or make it seem like the airport was a dangerous place. Emma wrote about the times when security checkpoints were understaffed during the busiest hours. She included the exact dates and times when she had observed this. She wrote about the equipment that seemed to need more attention, describing exactly what she had seen and when she had seen it. She also included the conversations she had with Tom and Betty, being careful not to use their names or get them in trouble. When Emma finished her report, she read it over many times. She wanted to make sure it sounded professional and respectful. She wasn't trying to attack the airport or cause problems. She was trying to help make things better and safer for everyone. Emma made an appointment to meet with Mr. Harrison, the airport director. She had never spoken to him before, but she knew he was the person in charge of making important decisions about airport operations. Mr. Harrison was a tall man with graying hair who had been running the airport for 8 years. Emma had heard that he was very focused on keeping the airport running efficiently and profitably. On the day of their meeting, Emma felt nervous as she walked to Mr. Harrison's office. She carried her report in a folder, along with copies of some of her most important notes. She knocked on his door and waited for him to tell her to come in. Harrison's office was large and had wind. O's that looked out over the runways. Emma could see planes taking off and landing in the distance. The office had certificates and awards on the walls, showing how successful the airport had been under his leadership. "Please sit down, Emma," Mr. Harrison said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I understand you have some concerns you'd like to discuss." Emma handed him the report and waited while he read through it. She watched his face carefully, trying to understand what he was thinking. At first, he seemed interested and was reading carefully, but as he continued reading, his expression began to change. He started to look frustrated and even a little angry. When Mr. Harrison finished reading, he put the report down on his desk and looked at Emma with a serious expression. "Emma, you're making mountains out of molehills," he said. His voice was firm and not very friendly. "These are minor issues that don't affect passenger safety. Every airport deals with these kinds of small problems. We have systems in place to handle them." Emma felt surprised by his reaction. She had expected him to be interested in her observations, maybe even grateful that she was paying such close attention to safety issues. "But, sir," Emma said carefully, "I think these small problems could become bigger problems if we don't address them." Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "Emma, if word gets out about these concerns, it could hurt our reputation and cost people their jobs. We're competing with other airports for airline business. If airlines think we have problems, they might move their flights somewhere else. That would mean less money for the airport and fewer jobs for everyone who works here." Emma felt her heart sink. She had expected some resistance, but she hadn't expected to be dismissed so completely. Mr. Harrison was acting like her concerns were not important at all. "I just want to make sure passengers are safe," Emma said quietly. "Passengers are safe," Mr. Harrison replied. "We have one of the best safety records of any airport in Europe. These minor issues you've identified don't change that fact." Emma left the meeting feeling confused and disappointed. She had spent so much time and effort preparing her report, and it seemed like Mr. Harrison hadn't really listened to her concerns at all. Over the following weeks, Emma noticed that things began to change for her at work. Her access to certain areas of the airport was restricted. When she asked why, she was told that new security procedures required different clearance levels. Emma suspected that this was really because of her meeting with Mr. Harrison. Her daily reports were questioned more harshly than before. Her supervisor, Mr. Roberts, began asking her to explain every small detail of her observations. Other inspectors who had always been friendly to her started to avoid her. Emma could tell that word had spread about her meeting with Mr. Harrison, and people were worried about being associated with someone who was causing trouble. Emma began to feel very lonely at work. She had always enjoyed talking to her colleagues, and felt like she was part of a team. Now, she felt like an outsider. Some people still said hello to her, but the conversations were shorter and less friendly than before. At home, the stress began to affect Emma's relationship with her daughter Lucy. Emma tried to hide her worries, but Lucy was too smart and too caring not to notice that something was wrong. One evening, Lucy came home from school with exciting news. She had been accepted to university to study business management. Emma was very proud of her daughter, but she also felt worried. University would be expensive. and Lucy would need financial support from her mother. "Mom, maybe you should just let this go," Lucy said one evening while they were having dinner. "We need your job. I know you want to do the right thing, but maybe sometimes it's better to just keep quiet." Emma felt torn between her love for her daughter and her belief that she needed to speak up about her concerns. She didn't want to risk losing her job and not being able to help Lucy achieve her dreams. That night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling. She thought about her father, who had been an aircraft mechanic before he died 5 years ago. He had always told her, "Emma, if you see something that isn't right, you have a duty to speak up. That's how we keep people safe." Emma remembered how proud her father had been of her job as a safety inspector. He had always said that her work was important and that she was helping to protect people. Emma wondered what he would want her to do now. As she lay there in the darkness, Emma felt more alone and confused than she had ever felt before. 3 weeks after Emma's disappointing meeting with Mr. Harrison, something unexpected happened. Emma received a phone call at home from a man who introduced himself as James Mitchell. He explained that he was a journalist who wrote about aviation safety for several newspapers and magazines. "Miss Thompson," James said politely, "I've been hearing some interesting things about your work at the airport. I was wondering if we could meet for a coffee to discuss your observations about airport safety procedures." Emma felt nervous about talking to a journalist. She worried that speaking to the media might get her in even more trouble at work. But James sounded respectful and professional. And Emma was feeling so alone that she decided to meet with him. They met at a quiet coffee shop near Emma's home. James was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He ordered a cup of tea and sat across from Emma, listening carefully as she explained her concerns about the airport. James said after she finished talking, "I've been writing about aviation safety for 15 years. I've been hearing similar concerns from other airports across the country. You are not alone in this." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. For weeks, she had been feeling like she was the only person who cared about these issues. Learning that other people shared her concerns made her feel less crazy and less alone. James explained that he had been investigating patterns of safety concerns at airports throughout Britain. He had spoken to other safety inspectors, baggage handlers, maintenance workers, and flight attendants who had similar stories to Emma's. All of them had noticed small problems that worried them. But most of them felt afraid to speak up. "The problem isn't that airports are unsafe," James explained. "British airports are among the safest in the world. The problem is that economic pressures sometimes make it difficult for people to discuss safety concerns openly. When workers feel like they can't talk about their observations, small problems can grow into bigger ones." A few days later, James called Emma again. He wanted to introduce her to someone who might be able to help her. He arranged for Emma to meet Margaret Foster, a former airline pilot who now worked as a safety advocate. Margaret was a woman in her 50s with short grey hair and a confident manner. She had been flying commercial aircraft for 25 years before she retired and started working to improve aviation safety standards. Margaret met Emma at the same coffee shop where Emma had met James. "I understand you're going through a difficult time," Margaret said, sitting down across from Emma. "I faced similar challenges during my flying career. There were times when I noticed things that worried me, but I felt like nobody wanted to listen." Margaret told Emma about her own experiences. She had once reported concerns about maintenance procedures at her airline, and she had faced resistance from management. Some of her fellow pilots had avoided her, worried about being associated with someone who was causing trouble. "But I learned something important," Margaret continued. "The goal wasn't to tear down the aviation industry. It's to help it become even better. Every safety improvement in aviation history came from people like you who cared enough to speak up. Margaret explained that she now worked with a group of aviation professionals who were dedicated to improving safety standards. They included former pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers, and safety inspectors from airports around the world. All of them believed that open discussion of safety concerns was essential for keeping aviation safe. We don't work against the industry, Margaret said. We work with it. We help companies understand that addressing safety concerns actually makes them stronger and more successful, not weaker, with Margaret's guidance. Emma learned how to present her concerns in a way that focused on solutions rather than just problems. Instead of just pointing out what was wrong, Emma learned to suggest specific ways that procedures could be improved. Margaret also introduced Emma to an online network of safety professionals. Through this network, Emma discovered that many other safety inspectors across the country had similar experiences. They shared stories and advice about how to address safety concerns in positive ways. Emma began to feel less alone and more hopeful. She realized that her concerns were part of a larger conversation about how to make aviation even safer. She wasn't fighting against the industry she loved. She was fighting for it. At home, Lucy began to understand her mother's commitment better. She had been reading some of the articles that James Mitchell had written about aviation safety, and she was learning about the important work that people like her mother were doing. "Mom," Lucy said one evening while they were washing dishes together, "I've been thinking about what you're doing at work. I'm proud of you. You're fighting for something important." Emma felt tears come to her eyes. Having her daughter's support meant everything to her. "I was scared that I might lose my job and not be able to help you with university," Emma admitted. "Mom, we'll figure out the money somehow," Lucy said. "What you're doing is more important than money. You're trying to keep people safe. That's what you've always taught me to do, to stand up for what's right." Emma hugged her daughter tightly. She realized that Lucy had grown up to be a young woman with strong values and a good heart. Emma felt proud of her daughter and grateful for her support. That night, Emma felt more hopeful than she had in months. She wasn't alone in her concerns, and she had people who could help her make a positive difference. 6 months after Emma first met with Margaret Foster and James Mitchell, things began to change at the airport in ways that Emma had never expected. The turning point came when James published his first article about airport safety concerns. The article was carefully written and respectful, focusing on how airports could improve their safety procedures rather than criticizing them. The article caught the attention of airline executives and government officials who were responsible for aviation safety. Instead of being angry about the publicity, many of them were interested in learning more about how they could make their operations even better. Harrison, the airport director, received several phone calls from airline companies asking about the safety improvements mentioned in the article. To his surprise, the airlines were not worried about the airport's reputation. Instead, they were impressed that the airport was taking a proactive approach to safety. One morning, Mr. Harrison called Emma into his office. Emma felt nervous, expecting that she might be in trouble again. But when she sat down across from his desk, Mr. Harrison's expression was different from the last time they had met. "Emma," he said, "I've been thinking about our conversation from a few months ago. I may have been too quick to dismiss your concerns. We've been getting positive feedback from our airline partners about our commitment to safety improvement." Emma felt surprised but hopeful. Mr. Harrison continued speaking. "I'd like you to lead a new safety communication initiative here at the airport. We want to create a system where all employees feel comfortable raising safety concerns and where those concerns are addressed quickly and effectively. Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. Instead of being punished for speaking up, she was being asked to help create positive change. Over the following months, Emma worked with airport management to develop new protocols. They established better communication systems between departments, so that concerns could be shared more easily. They created more thorough training programs for all staff, teaching everyone about the importance of reporting safety observations. Most importantly, they created a culture where asking questions and raising concerns was seen as a sign of professionalism and dedication, not as causing trouble. Emma's approach of combining respect for the industry with commitment to continuous improvement became a model that other airports wanted to learn about. She began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and to visit other airports to share her ideas. At home, Lucy watched her mother's transformation with pride and admiration. Emma was no longer stressed and worried about work. Instead, she came home each evening excited about the positive changes that were happening. "Mom, I've been thinking about what I want to study at university," Lucy said one evening over dinner. "I want to study aviation management. I want to help make the industry better too." Just like you're doing, Emma felt her heart fill with pride and joy. Her daughter had been inspired by her example to pursue a career where she could make a positive difference. "I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart," Emma said. "The aviation industry needs people who care about both safety and excellence." James Mitchell continued to write articles about the positive changes happening in aviation safety. He wrote about Emma's story as an example of how one person's commitment to truth and transparency would benefit everyone. His articles helped other airport workers feel more confident about speaking up when they had concerns. Margaret Foster visited Emma's airport to see the changes that had been implemented. She was impressed by how the airport had transformed its safety culture in such a short time. "You've created something special here," Margaret told Emma. "Other airports are going to want to learn from what you've accomplished." One evening, 6 months after the changes began, Emma stood at the airport's observation deck. This was a special area where people could watch planes take off and land through large windows. Emma loved coming here after work to watch the aircraft and think about her day. As she watched a large passenger jet lift off into the evening sky, Emma thought about all the families aboard that flight, parents traveling with children, business people going to important meetings, young couples starting their honeymoons, grandparents visiting their grandchildren. All of these people trusted that they would reach their destinations safely. Emma knew that her efforts, along with those of many other dedicated professionals, had made that trust even more well-placed. The airport was now a place where safety concerns were discussed openly and addressed quickly. Margaret Foster joined Emma at the observation deck. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching planes take off and land in the distance. "You did something important, Emma," Margaret said. "You showed that caring about safety and supporting the industry aren't opposites. They're the same thing." Emma smiled, feeling peaceful for the first time in months. She had learned that real change happens when people have the courage to speak truth with respect, and when institutions have the wisdom to listen. As another plane took off safely into the night sky, Emma felt grateful for the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had discovered that one person's commitment to doing the right thing could create positive change that benefited everyone. Lucy joined them at the observation deck. Having finished her homework for the evening, the three women stood together, watching the busy airport operate smoothly and safely. "I'm proud to be part of this industry," Lucy said. Putting her arm round her mother's shoulders, Emma looked at her daughter and smiled. She knew that the future of aviation was in good hands.